Hello and welcome to today's lesson on elements of nonfiction. You can see here there are a number of different categories of elements that fall under nonfiction writing, and today we are actually only going to be looking at two of these categories. The first one being author's purposes in nonfiction writing as well as writing techniques in nonfiction writing. So let's jump right into it. The first thing we're going to look at is author's purpose in nonfiction. So when you're reading a piece, naturally what you want to do as a reader is ask yourself, why is the writer writing this? What do they want me to do at the end of this? So there are a few different things, and the best way to figure out their purpose is to ask yourself, what does the author want from me at the end? So you can see here we have three main purposes for writing nonfiction. The first one is to persuade. So this is where you might ask yourself, is the author trying to share important information with me? Is the author trying to convince me to act or think in a certain way or even behave in a certain way? Think about advertisements that you see, a lot of those infomercials. Those are people out there or companies trying to get you to buy their product. Those are persuasive pieces. The next reason why somebody might be writing nonfiction is to inform you. So ask yourself, is the author telling me facts? Is the author trying to teach me how to do something? Or am I learning something new here? So that would be an informative piece. The final reason why an author might write is simply to entertain. So you might ask yourself, is the selection funny or silly? Is the author telling me a story? Do we have main characters? Do we have a plot? Do we have any type of suspense? Even though it's nonfiction, you can still have all of those elements of a story, and in that case, the main purpose of this piece is generally to entertain. And so, looking at those three different purposes, I have a few different passages here. What I'd like you to do is take a few minutes one by one and read through them and try to guess, can you figure out what the purpose is? So right now, take a look at number one, read through it, see if you can find some of those key words that back up whatever you decide. Is this a persuasive piece? Is this an informative piece? Or is this an entertainment piece? Hopefully you got it. This one is definitely to inform. So if you look at that very first sentence, this is our main idea here. The author says there are many things you can do with a pumpkin. So from there, we expect to hear some of the things that you can do with the pumpkin. Now, if he's talking about things you do, these are verbs. So you want to be looking for those key words, the different verbs that you find within the paragraph. So as you go down here, you can see you can use it for decoration. You can bake with it. Finally, you can take the seeds and toast them. So all these action words, things that you can do with the pumpkin. And of course, this is an informative piece. Move on over to number two. See if you can figure out what the purpose is for number two. If you got that this is to persuade, you're absolutely right. Obviously, this person wants to give you their opinion that pumpkin pie is the best dessert ever and that everybody should agree and everybody should have lots of pumpkin pies for their Thanksgiving feast and for whatever else they might be entertaining for. Okay, so if you got that, wonderful. The next one is number three. Go ahead and give that a read through. See if you can figure out, is this to persuade, to inform, or to entertain? So if you got entertain, great job. If you read through this, you can see that this one is all about Grandma Jane. We have that character introduced. We see her in the setting. It's her kitchen at Thanksgiving time. That's definitely setting. Background information. We have a little bit of a sense of urgency here. Her guests were going to be there at any moment. So we've got this sense of uh-oh, she needs to get moving. She's busy, she's setting up, she's cooking, and then all of a sudden we have smoke coming from the oven, and in the end, everyone laughed. So we see that here they're giving us an entertaining, funny little story. Okay, move on over to number four. See if you can figure this one out. Did you get that this one is to persuade? Hopefully you did if you read through it. This one's a little bit different in format. This one's obviously, this is a letter. So the audience has changed here. This isn't something written for everybody. This is Joey writing to his mom, and he presents the argument that little sister needs to start helping raking the leaves, and he puts forth a couple different claims that she's old enough to do it, that he's been doing it by himself, and it's time that he gets a break. So we definitely have some good reasons here why Joey shouldn't be alone in raking the leaves. So that's author's purpose in a nutshell, and if you want a little bit of an easy mnemonic there to remember author's purpose, you can use the acronym PIE. It's as easy as pie, and you have PIE, persuade, inform, or entertain. And again, if you're not sure, read through the passage first and then ask yourself, what did I get out of that? Was it a funny story? Was I entertained? Did I learn something? Or does the author want me to do something? Those are your main questions to help you figure out what the author's purpose is. Okay, so we have gotten through that. Next, we are going to work through some of the techniques that an author uses when writing. So we will go through all of these today. Oh, we are not going through types of appeals. So we've covered author's purpose in nonfiction, and now we're going to talk about some of the writing techniques used in nonfiction. Here we have the definition of rhetoric, and for those who do not know, rhetoric basically refers to speaking or writing eloquently or effectively. So somebody who speaks well or presents their ideas well is in good command of their rhetoric. Rhetorical questions are questions that are often used in a question and answer structure of writing, and rhetorical questions can sometimes actually be used as an organizational tool. Often authors will use rhetorical questions to help the reader know what he or she is going to learn in each section of the text. So you might see headings or subheadings that are actual questions, but a rhetorical question leads the reader to know what to expect next. They're not meant to be answered by anyone except the speaker. They're setting you up to know what the speaker is going to be informing you about next. Rhetorical questions can be found anywhere. You can see there are some examples here on the screen. They're very popular in advertising, and you'll see them in music and on TV. Here we have an example. So what would you expect to read about next if the rhetorical question is this? What are some different ways you can recycle plastic bottles? So you probably wrote some examples, some things that you've seen or heard about different things you can do with plastic bottles. Again, this isn't for the reader to really answer. It's just some things for you to think about and focus your ideas. You might even see a blog that's going to give you some pictures of different things that you could do with plastic bottles. But the idea is that the rhetorical question focuses the reader or the listener in a certain direction to get thinking about a topic. The next technique is parallelism. Parallelism is used by an author to focus the reader in a certain direction. So here you have, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom, it was the age of foolishness. It was the epoch of belief, it was the epoch of incredulity. It was the season of light, it was the season of darkness. It was the spring of hope, it was the winter of despair. By repeating it was in the passage, the readers are prompted to focus on the traits of the age that they're going to be reading about in the succeeding passages. So this is the opening paragraph for the story, and you can see these are all opposites: best of times, worst of times, wisdom, foolishness. So you can tell Dickens is basically telling you right off the bat that this time period, this setting, is full of confusion and contrasts. The next one is similar to parallelism, but we call it anaphora. Now this is repetition again, but this is repetition of a single word. This passage is from The Meaning of 4th of July for the Negro by Frederick Douglass. Frederick Douglass was a freed slave who moved to the North, and here he's trying to point out the point of view between the American slave in the South and the freed people, or just people in general of the North, who don't understand what that slave experience was. So I'll read some of this here. It says, "What to the American slave is your 4th of July? I answer, a day that reveals to him more than all other days of the year the gross injustice and cruelty to which he is the constant victim. To him your celebration is a sham, your boasted liberty an unholy license, your national greatness swelling vanity. Your sounds of rejoicing are empty and heartless, your denunciation of tyrants brass-fronted impudence, your shout of liberty and equality hollow mockery." And you could read on, but you can see basically he's using the word your to contrast the slave's viewpoint on the 4th of July versus the people in the North and the way they view the holiday. Analogy is another technique used by authors very often. Analogies are used when an author is having a hard time or maybe thinks that the reader will have a hard time understanding the relationship or an event or situation that's occurring. So what they do is they use an outside example to compare it to. So here you can see this is a short analogy of poverty is to wealth, as sickness is to health. And here the relationship is one of opposites. So poverty is the opposite of wealth, sickness is the opposite of health. Analogies in writing are generally more complex. So here we have this one: accepting tuition from handicapped students and then not providing safe access to the classroom for instruction is like having a customer pay for a brand new car but not providing keys to the vehicle. So think about how these two situations are similar. The relationship that you come up with is what creates the analogy. So here the author is basically saying that if you're denying students access, you're taking their money, but you're not giving them access to the classroom. It's pretty similar to taking the money for a brand new car, but not giving the customer the actual keys so they can get in the car and drive away. Denying access. So that's the relationship that connects these. Point of view is yet another technique, and we will be talking more about point of view later in the course. However, keep in mind that the technique is used to give the reader a sense of what the author is thinking. And often in a persuasive piece, you will see a point of view that will make readers more sympathetic to the author's cause. So here you can see the example. It says, we must band together to ask the city council to spend the extra money on something that makes sense to all of us citizens. A new park would be much better for us than another parking garage. Here the idea that the author is using is not saying city council has to do this or you people need to vote for this. He's joining with them. He's making himself part of the cause, bonding people to him, to his point of view, in hopes that people will feel that they relate to him and his ideas. So we have come to the end. We've gone through a lot of stuff. If you need to, go ahead and rewind, review some of these. If you have questions, be sure to bring them back to the classroom and ask your teacher. And that's it. Have a fantastic day.